This episode of Where Did the Road Go is brought to you in part by our Patreons. If you want to become a patron, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
All right, welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And this is the last, I'm assuming the last roundtable of 2018. We're actually doing it on the winter solstice. And here in the upstate New York, where it has been 30 since October, it was 70 today, but just for today. And I am here with Adam Sane, Red Pill Junkie, and Serfiel. Hello. Hi, guys.
Hello. Feliz Navidad. All that stuff.
So I think the weather is just messing with us at this point.
Well, messing with you. I mean, it's pretty nice down here in Mexico.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, it was like 30 2 days ago, and then it warmed up slightly, and then it was like 70 today, and then tomorrow it's going to be 30. And I'm like, right, warmed up just for the summer solstice. Thanks, for the winter solstice. All right, great.
For some reason, I lost you guys there for a second. I don't know why. That was weird.
Skype's been acting weird. I was having issues earlier. So anyway, seeing that this is probably the last show we're recording in 2018, let's talk about some of the stuff that happened this year and see where it goes from there. And Red Pill, you mentioned a big one. John Anthony West died this year, and he had been fighting.
Sure.
Yeah, he had been fighting. Was it just? I forget what kind of cancer it was, but he was. They really, I think, thought he was going to beat it, but he was up there. He was in his 90s.
Mm-hmm. I had the good fortune of actually meeting him in person. So a couple of years ago, in one of the Paradigm Symposium conferences in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I didn't get a chance to talk. Privately with him or anything, but I did get the opportunity to see just how a congenial person he was. He was there when everybody was hanging out and chilling at the lobby. Having like this after party after the symposium had ended on Sunday night, and he was there. It was way past midnight, but he was still there listening to the music because some people were singing and playing the guitar. Micah Hanks, a friend, and he was there with his proverbial glass of vodka, and he seemed to have had a really good time. And yeah, it's really sad that he passed away. I think that. Prior to his passing away, and because of his fight with cancer, he was raising money, through crowdsourcing for his treatment. I think he was trying. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I think he was trying to use some kind of non-orthodox treatment for his cancer, and well, obviously you could say that it didn't work, but maybe it managed to give him a bit of quality of life, by the end.
Yeah, I got to meet him. Oh, I don't even know when. He was 85, by the way, when he died. I got to meet him a few years ago, thanks to Laird Scranton, because Laird and he were friends and didn't live very far apart. And I had said something to Laird about, hey, can we get John Anthony West and do an interview like in person or something? And Laird's like, oh yeah, I'm sure we could do that. And I get back hey, John wants to have us all over for a barbecue. And I was like, yes, that would be awesome. Yes, let's go with yes there. I mean, it was like a 4.5 hour drive, but that's okay.
Oh man, you don't say no to that.
Yeah, exactly. And he lived sort of in this fairly small house, like built almost into a cliffside. It was a little hard to describe because it was in the mountainous area in upstate New York, along the Adirondacks. And it was the type of thing where you get up there and there's no more cell service. It's hit and miss as you're driving through that area. So you hope your mapping with software is keeping up to par to some degree. But yeah, he was incredibly nice. He I got to talk to him for quite a bit, and then we did that interview that's up on the Where Did the Road Go page, the video interview with him and Laird. And he was more interested in listening to Laird talk, I think, than talking about himself.
Mm.
Yeah, that was a good interview that you did with the both of them. That's one of the first of your shows I listened to.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool. And if anyone doesn't know, he's known for being the person who noticed the water erosion on the Sphinx. And that came from an actual Egyptologist years earlier had written that the Sphinx had been weathered not by wind, but by water. And he went, what? And he went and he looked at it and he looked at, what water erosion looks like and realized that's water erosion. That's not wind erosion like the Egyptologists keep saying. Right. And he realized that meant this is a lot older. And he he looked around for a geologist who would actually come and take an honest look at it. Found Robert Schoch. Schoch came out, I think Schoch said initially he was like, well, I always wanted to go to Egypt and I was going to be paid to go there. He's like, I didn't think anything was going to come of it. He's like, but I took one look at the Sphinx and went, oh yeah, that's rain erosion. That's hundreds of years of rain erosion. That is not wind erosion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pretty amazing discovery there.
Yeah.
It's still not accepted.
Yeah, it's not accepted by Egyptologists.
It's pretty blatant. No, not at all.
And that's one of the things Schoch has had to fight with. He said, geologists look at it and go, oh yeah, that's rain erosion. And, Egyptologists turn around, spit on him and walk out,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So,
well, I mean, and the saddest thing about John dying is that right now we're beginning to see this slow but sure change in all these topics, right? How these things that used to be fringe are now pretty much becoming mainstream thanks to him and also to Schoch and also to Graham Hancock and all this.
Yep.
I mean, this idea of the comet impacts that ended the Younger Dryas and pretty much wiped out the megafauna on North America like 13,000 years ago, and also Göbekli Tepe. All these things are coming together, and I honestly feel that one of the reasons that this is becoming part of the mainstream is because of the work of people like John Anthony West, who were never actually given the true the true recognition that he deserved, because he wasn't a proper scientist. He didn't have the right credentials, and that's why he didn't even get a chance to defend himself in that famous gathering of the Egyptologists. The only one who got to speak was Robert Schoch, because he did have the PhD. And it was hilarious.
Well, it seems like the geological community is adapting faster than the archaeological. It seems like it's a lot more political in the archaeological world.
Oh yeah,
right, sure.
Whereas geological people are more scientific, and based in the sciences.
It's political.
Adam keeps dropping out.
Yeah.
Adam,
there's definitely
more
political issues. Yeah, when it comes to things that directly relate to human civilization and human cultures,
and the pride of nations and countries.
Yes,
sure, exactly.
Because the current Egyptian, people want to believe that their ancestors built the Sphinx, but if it's jumping back to 10,000 BC, who knows who built it, because we don't know who was there then.
Right.
Exactly.
So, and Egyptologists don't want to have to rewrite all their work
Oh yeah.
and admit they were wrong.
Yeah, the same way that archaeologists in the Americas, they've resisted for the longest time to the idea that man had managed to arrive to this continent prior to the Clovis culture and using the Bering Strait in between Alaska and Russia.
Yeah.
Now we know that there's so much evidence pointing to the contrary that it's almost beside the point. Almost ludicrous.
Why do you think they're so reluctant to adjust?
For the same reason that Seriah said, because on certain ideas, and therefore those ideas become part of them. So it's not like science is about coming up with an hypothesis, and if there is data or evidence pointing to the contrary, then you have to discard that hypothesis and move on. But that's not the way that humans behave.
Is there a larger population in the harder sciences than there is in archaeology? Because that would contribute to just a critical mass, maybe. But I don't know what the figures are.
No, me neither. Well,
the other thing is, there's like this gradualism and this Darwin worship that goes on within the sciences that says everything slowly and methodically progresses from lesser to more. So when you have something like the Sphinx that suggests a high technology, and you put it into, like the Egyptian culture 4,000 years ago, well, that's sort of acceptable. But when you're saying, nope, this thing could be 10,000 years old, that's not acceptable, because that implies that something happened, that some culture was lost and we don't know anything about it. And the same with the Americas. They don't want to believe that, hey, there could have been people here a lot longer than this very simple out of Africa spread across the Bering Strait, etc. And more evidence is pushing things older, and it's pushing things in a variety of directions that aren't fitting with that status quo.
Mm-hmm. I think the actual evolutionary timeline is getting pushed back more too. So it's like we're supposed to accept that there's been pretty modern, what we consider modern humans now for, maybe 100, 200,000 plus years, but we're not supposed to accept that they were able to create what we consider a civilization.
Right.
That's what's
right.
And you have people like Michael Cremo, who has, sat and gone through all these old science books showing that we have modern human skeletons going back billions of years that are simply ignored by science. It's like, well, if it's out of place, so instead of saying this is interesting, they just say, well, we're just going to toss that out. It must be wrong.
Right.
And you have, like, I love in one of the Lost Cities books from David Hatcher Childress, he says he was in some temple in Mexico, and they're saying, well, this temple is however many thousand, like 1,000 years old or whatever. And there's a lava flow that had dried up, that had moved through the temple at some point. Mm-hmm. And the person says, and that lava flow is, 5,000 years old or whatever. And he goes, wait a minute. So the lava flow that's on top of the temple is older than the temple? And the tour guide went, yeah. And he's like, no.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. Totally in a visible place.
Because you can carbon date the lava, so you know how old that lava flow is.
Exactly.
And it does, but it does, if it doesn't fit with that gradual creation of society and culture, then it gets thrown out. It gets ignored.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you think some of it too could be that they want to try to attribute these achievements to a particular culture instead of trying to say that there was another culture that was here that was possibly superior, and then you're going to bring a whole bunch of, some of the modern concepts about is this racist? They like the whole Jason Colavito stuff about how Ancient Aliens, for example, is essentially racist because they think that it's a bunch of white aliens, or the Atlantean thing is racist because it's white people from overseas, and they're just afraid to dig into that because they think that's what they're going to find.
I don't know.
There's definitely that, but at the same time, there is also kind of like a reverse racism on the part of all those people who are maintaining these gradual, rise of civilization that Seriah is mentioning. What I'm saying here is, for example, the late Philip Coppens used to say, okay, these archaeologists are telling us, the people who proposed ancient aliens theories or primordial civilization theories, that we're being racist by saying that, by denying that these ancient cultures had the knowledge or the creativity to build all these incredibly complex megalithic structures and all these ancient temples, ancient sites. But at the same time, those archaeologists, when they read the mythologies left behind by those people, and they're saying, these gods that came from the sky or that they came from other place, they taught us everything we know. That's when they say, well, that is fantasy, that's fairy tales.
Right,
so,
right.
So there's this double standard that is being used in Orthodox archaeology.
That's where I think that I'm coming from on that, is that it seems like, well, we have this whole, I think I've said this before, where we have there's this conception of the kind of like the 19th century racism that the white person is superior and all this kind of thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's a 19th century conception. And now the more like into like the mid to 20th century conception of multiculturalism is also a modern concept. So we're kind of applying that conflict to things that happen in the past that may not necessarily have happened. And does that damage the research that's being done when you're trying to look at this? You're trying to look at this from some kind of objective viewpoint.
Right. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with just the excesses of that, of what happened in the past with a lot of pseudo archaeology and pseudoscience and
right.
I've got a lot of family history in the Mormon church, so I know all about it, and that kind of the British Israelism stuff. And so because of that, there's a backlash to that, and people don't want to look like they're going down those same, go down the same paths.
Right. They were going down like Ignatius Donnelly stuff about Atlantis, where where it's obviously where it comes from that kind of comes from theosophy, which has
not to mention not wanting to look like the Nazis.
Yeah. Well, it all has kind of this social Darwinist kind of origin to it in a way.
Right. Yeah, totally.
And of course, at the end of the day, they all these intellectuals, the main culture that they're defending is our culture. The predominance and the superiority of our current culture is what they never put into question.
Right.
Because the idea that maybe there were cultures that in some regards were superior or more superior than ours is something that is completely anathema. And obviously, when we say more superior, people, skeptics jump and say, okay, so where is the ancient equivalent of an iPhone that we can find and we can say, oh yeah, right, these guys were more and it's so stupid. It's like trying to judge those people by our standards,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's
We-
like
we-
when the Spaniards came to Mexico, and they were saying, well, these people are so stupid because they don't even have they didn't even invent the wheel.
Yeah.
And it's like, say, what are you saying? You know, there was no reason for them to use the wheel because there were no kind of animals like ox or horses that they could use in order to pull some kind of carriage or some kind of cart.
But yet they had all these amazing astronomical calculations.
Exactly.
It's just that their
That
technology.
they ended up burning most of them. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Mayas had the concept of the zero, something that Europeans mathematicians didn't comprehend at the time.
Their technology took another form.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
what is then a Western kind of, or really Western Near Eastern form that it eventually that they took in those areas.
Yeah,
took a
or
different
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I've been thinking about a lot is that how really desirable is that to everyone having a urban priest caste military based society. That wasn't
Right.
really a good deal for most people, and I think a lot of people had a lot of wisdom and figured out a lot of cool stuff and led some good lives without that being the benchmark for everything. Like,
Yeah.
Exactly. I just finished beta reading a book that is coming out next year. The title is Civilized to Death by Dr. Christopher Ryan. And Christopher makes the argument that, this thing that we call civilization really is nothing to be that proud of. Because most of human history, like 90% of the history of our species, Homo sapiens sapiens, was lived as hunter-gatherers. And you will say, oh, those poor people, they were so malnourished, and they only lived to the age of 37, and they were just plagued by disease. And none of that is true. So that
Yeah.
is
four-hour workday.
crap. Those guys lived more fulfilling lives. They had to work less hours than even us
Yes.
in the 21st century.
Well, and for the most of the people in those quote civilized places, they didn't have, people at the bottom did not have long lifespans.
Exactly. For example, this concept of the noble savage, right? Chris traces back the origin of that term, and the guy who coined it, he didn't mean what we think that the concept means. It's because to us the concept of noble savage is, that these indigenous people are kinder and more moral than us in the Western civilization. But no, to the person who coined that term, when he coined it after looking at how Native Americans lived, and to him, they lived like nobles in Europe, because
Right.
the nobleman in Europe is the one who doesn't have to work and who is free to choose what he wants to do with his time. If he wants to do and say, okay, I'm going to hunt today, okay, he goes and does it the same way that Native Americans does. And if he wants to go fishing instead, he can do that. But no, in Europe, the peasants were told what they had to do with their time. They weren't the owners of their own time. They were servants. They were basically slaves.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I think that our culture has a problem with is the idea that with that gradualism, it's like, okay, everything keeps getting better. But if you add catastrophism into it, that
Yes.
sometimes things go away, even advanced cultures, that's scary to a lot of people.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, Chris makes the argument that the greatest folly that mankind ever did was adopting agriculture, because all these things that we are talking about, how these hierarchical societies start to have these people at the bottom who are like trampled by people at the top, and then women are treated like cattle. All that came out of agriculture. And he makes the argument that agriculture was kind of like a desperate move on behalf of our ancestors, that they had no choice but to resort to agriculture for a variety of reasons. One of them is this thing we were talking about, the end of the Younger Dryas, when after a long summer that lasted like 1,000 years, and people got accustomed to easy sources of food, and maybe the population grew too big, then the temperatures dropped dramatically, and they had no choice but to resort to agriculture in order to keep all those extra people, alive.
Sounds like the cast out from Eden, doesn't it? A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically that. I mean, if you read the Genesis, you see that there started to be this idea of belittling or looking down upon the hunter-gatherers, or and this idea that the farmers are the new like the new masters.
Yeah, well, Cain was a herdsman and Abel was a farmer.
Yep,
right?
that's it right there.
Right.
Yeah, the nomad and the established farmer. Serfiel, who's the guy you were talking about? That's
the anarcho-primitivist stuff.
Yeah.
John Zerzan is like probably the big guy of that. He's he became really good friends with Ted Kaczynski, of course. When he's kind of like the leader of the green anarchist, neo-Luddite kind of crowd. He has I think one of his most famous books is Against Civilization. That was, I think Feral House helped him put it out, and so he's probably like one of the premier guys. There's another guy, Peter Lamborn Wilson, and he kind of talks about those ideas of a lot of the archaeological and historical community sees groups of people that they think have devolved from civilized people. And he puts it, maybe these people were like, let's get out of here on purpose, and went to do their own thing away from, being away from servitude under some, regime of priest caste king gods who would just conscript them. They die in some war or whatever, building a pyramid,
Right.
Seriah, wasn't there a guy that you had on early on that talked about that kind of stuff on your show?
I don't remember. It's possible.
It's interesting. I definitely don't consider myself like a Luddite, but I'm open-minded to thinking about things in different ways.
Not necessarily a paranormal or theme, but kind of on the same similar vein is what happened in North Sentinelese Island that was on the news.
What's that?
Oh, that was very interesting.
About the mission, the kid that went 26 years old. He went as a missionary. So these people that have to say that they're uncontacted is actually a misnomer. They've been contacted, and they're hostile towards anybody that comes to that island. And this kid goes there, and they warned him off the first time, and he goes back, and they killed him. And he was trying to convert them,
right, to Christianity.
Yeah, that was definitely a big story of 18. Yeah.
And now what's interesting is that most of the people who have come in contact with those quote unquote primitive hunter-gatherer groups, and more often than not, they are the ones who get converted to their way of life.
Yeah.
If you read the writings of Benjamin Franklin, it used to say that they had to impose very, very harsh sanctions to all the people, all the Westerners that wanted to go native and wanted to go and live with
you're getting into real interesting territory with that, because Peter Lamborn Wilson talks a lot about that, about these triracial isolate groups. There's kind of this whole hidden history in Northern America even from Jamestown on, of people who went out, indentured servants, European people mixing with slaves and different kinds of Native Americans, to kind of in these isolated communities that were just
we
really
have
trying
one
to
here
avoid.
in Tennessee. We have one here in Tennessee, the Melungeons.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's what they called them around here. And so there's a lot of history of this kind of thing. And it was people, getting away from being slaves and servants and getting out of civilization.
And not just that too, but if you think about the early settlers, I mean, it would have been a lot harder to try to create a town in a city where you live with a bunch of farm animals and you essentially live in your own filth and your own disease. And if you look over there and you see the Native Americans pretty much living a clean lifestyle because they're always constantly on the move, like that lifestyle would be better and much healthier to live than being in some crowded little settlement.
Right. Because all these modern diseases that afflict us, they were the result of us starting to live in close proximity with all these animals that were started to domesticate.
Yep.
And all these diseases started to be jumping from the animals to the humans.
Mm-hmm.
And
we developed immunities to those because it just so gradually over time. All except for syphilis, which came from the New World. But
so Michael Marshall Smith, who I've had on this show, fiction writer, wrote a book called The Straw Man. That was the first of 3, where he talks about this sort of secret group that wants to bring us back to a hunter-gatherer civilization. So they seed chaos, and they're the ones behind all the shootings and all this other stuff, because they're literally trying to roll back so that we go back to that hunter-gatherer society because they feel it was better for us as a whole.
Yeah,
it's like the anti-Illuminati.
Sort of.
Right, yeah. 12 monkeys kind of a scenario.
Yeah.
Problem is that it wouldn't work. Even Chris Ryan, who is all about, defending the lifestyle of hunter-gatherers, admits that there's just too many people. So that we live in that kind of style. It wouldn't be possible.
Well, the Georgia Guidestone says keep the world down to 500 million.
That's what it's about, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, Chris is not suggesting a diet for some kind of cataclysm. What he is suggesting is understanding what kind of animal, so we can build better zoos for our own kind. You know what I mean? He says there's a difference between leaving an animal being trapped in the Calcutta Zoo and an animal being trapped in the San Diego Zoo. They're both devoid of their primordial independence, but the animal that is living in the San Diego Zoo is definitely living a more fulfilling life than the one living in the goddamn Calcutta Zoo, which is probably just a concrete pen with bars and no kind of stimulation.
Yeah.
So that's what he's saying. We need to understand what kind of animals we are in order to design better zoos for our own species.
Well, when you have all these cities where people are just crowded together,
exactly,
tension starts to rise. I mean, this is true for any animal population, and it's true for us too. I mean, how many people are in your city, Red Pill?
Oh my God,
Mexico City is like what, 30 million?
Close to 20, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, geez.
Hey, and you're totally right. The mere density population is cause of great tension.
Yeah.
When you go to the subway station and you see that the train is taking too long to arrive and all the people is gathering there, and you see, you're starting to feel the tension in the people. And the moment that you glimpse the train, that tension builds up even more, because everybody's trying to know that the moment that the doors open, it's every man for himself and trying to shove your way in, trying to reach, it's horrible. It's really, really horrible.
I bet it makes all those other ideas really provocative then.
But the die of no, well, maybe.
I want to be a hunter gatherer, man. I'm tired of this.
All right, yeah.
But you don't need a cataclysm or anything like that to reduce the population. You just need people to stop having so many children.
There you go.
Yeah, that's true. Terence McKenna said that the best thing that women in the first world could do to the environment was have less children.
Yeah.
To choose not to reproduce.
I saw a meme today that had a picture of a pregnant woman's belly, and it said millennials aren't having enough children to replace the population in the United States. And then below it, it showed a hospital bill of just astronomical costs that it costs to have a child.
Right.
So maybe they're doing that
or something.
Yeah, it's more than that. That's only for like the hospital stay. But maybe they're just making like it's becoming I guess in the developed world, it's becoming more and more prohibitive, even just cost wise, to have children.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also just expected that you're going to have children. It's
Right.
it's that cultural thing. It's especially a religious thing. That you're supposed to procreate and populate the earth, and that would be fine if we were trying to populate the earth after a disaster. But I think it's populated. I think we're good.
Well, even from a Darwinian point of view, if you don't get to reproduce, you are basically a failure.
Yeah. It's a cultural change that has to happen.
But
it is happening though. Especially in the developed world. I mean, it has been happening. But as the rest of the world wants a better way of life also and is developing, how's this gonna play out? I mean, who knows?
Well, the funny thing is that you hear a lot about the population boom, and you hear a lot about the woes of population growth, but also at the same time, there is
we're at a crisis in a lot of places in Japan and Europe, all over. Yeah,
right. The only thing that actually keeps the United States from having negative population growth is immigration.
Yep.
Okay, because a lot of people are coming in from Mexico, Central America. They're having more kids, and that's keeping us from having a negative population growth, as opposed to Europe, where that's not really happening, and you have like Italy, like they're in negative population growth.
And speaking of which, speaking of population growth and fertility, getting back to the hunter-gatherers, women in those hunter-gatherer groups become fertile every 4 years. Like every 4 years, they will have a child, whereas in developing countries or developed world, women became more fertile. Like they had children every 2 years.
Really? No, I've never heard of that. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Could that be due to nutrition though too?
No.
Because of agriculture, nutrition became better.
No. On the contrary, you have to remember, with agriculture, nutrition became worse.
Really?
Right. Like for example, take a look at there were dentists that went to the farthest, most remote tribes in the world, like in the Pacific Ocean and in Africa.
Not the Sentinelese, though, I'm sure.
And people in those tribes, they don't have any problems with their teeth. Their teeth are perfect. It is because of our high sugar, high fat, high carbohydrate diet that we live in, that we all suffer from cavities and gum disease and all of that. But getting back to women, why they are less fertile among hunter-gatherers, I think it has to do with the fact that among hunter-gatherers, women tend to breastfeed their children for far longer time. Like,
Mm.
it is not strange to women to breastfeed their children until they're 4 years old, and that is what causes their levels of hormones to lower down. So that's why they are
Okay.
they're
Okay.
less fertile than a woman in a developed nation. And even in a developed nation, breastfeeding has become something of a
I think that's changing a little bit.
no, not at all. In
But
the
it's
United States,
yeah, it's still strange for. I mean, I can remember someone I knew whose wife was breastfeeding their child at 2 years old and thinking that was strange. But hunter-gatherer society, which was kind of our default position on this planet, we they were doing it till they were 4.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it makes sense that they were less fertile because remember, they have to be they're hunter gatherers, are nomads, right? So a woman can be carrying, like two or more than one child on her back,
Right. Right.
moving from camp to camp. And also, it's true that among hunter gatherers there is definitely a higher rate of child mortality, which is the reason why people have this delusion that among them they could only live until 37 years old. It is just a statistical aberration.
It's an average. It's an average. Yeah.
Exactly, because they're factoring in all those children who don't get to live until they're old.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you go and look at old grave sites from 200 years ago, even here in the United States,
Right.
I mean, you see some extreme age, but they look at the average, but just like mortality was so much greater.
Right. People.
But if you lived past a certain age, you could live till you were 90 or 100 years old.
Yeah, well, the people say that the human body is designed to live only until late 70s, and after that is when everything starts to malfunction.
Yeah.
What was I going to say with this? And yeah, this idea that people consider it parents outliving their children to be unnatural, but that's actually not true. Because it was the most natural thing for parents to be, burying their children because they didn't manage to, live into adulthood for a variety of reasons. Plagues.
So no boss, 4-hour workday, and as long as she's still breastfeeding, you don't got to worry about it.
Right. Yeah. Not only that,
it doesn't sound that bad. Yeah.
Among hunter gatherers, they have these belief that a child is not born out of the semen of one single man. That a child is actually born out of this combination of the semen of all the sexual partners of a woman.
There's some kind of basis to that, isn't there? In that it doesn't transfer the child, but isn't there something about women retaining DNA of sexual partners?
Yes,
I think I think you're actually absolutely right. This has been a recent discovery that is fascinating.
So, but can that then be transferred to the? I don't understand biology enough, but that's interesting.
It'll be transferred in the sense that it affects the woman's DNA to begin with.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
But even if it's a myth, and obviously, it's a myth that serves a purpose in their culture, because then
you're one of everybody. You're one of us. Yeah.
Exactly. Men among hunter-gatherers, they don't worry. Oh, whose kid is that? Is it mine or is it yours? Well, who cares? It's one of us, and we have to provide for the kid.
It also shows that there's much more an importance to women in those type of cultures too, because there are a lot of those
Yeah.
those cultures that are matriarchies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know?
All right. So what else has happened this year?
We really went down that rabbit hole, didn't we?
Well, we
That was a
can
great discussion, though.
thanks. We could segue with this idea of child mortality with this announcement by the people who analyze the DNA of Atta. You know, this
Oh yeah.
weird ass mummy, like miniature mummy that Stephen Greer started to parade all over the place, saying that it was proof that it was some kind of alien biological entity, but it turns out it was just a human baby.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Surprise, surprise.
A human with very unusual defects.
Apparently so, yeah.
So, and of course, there's all the stuff we've talked to death about with To the Stars, and the supposed disclosure that was going to happen this year that never happened.
Come on, man! You just don't believe, Seriah. You got to believe.
You gotta believe, and you have to chip in also.
Right. Give us
Because
your
another
money.
another thing that became news this year is that their financial records were public, and some people are saying, "Oh, they're completely bankrupt." No, or they wasted millions of dollars. And no, it wasn't really true, but they're not in the most ideal financial position either.
Right. But I think
In
I
other
think
words, Blink 182's fans did not come through. Is that what you're saying?
but there's always this belief that next year there'll be disclosure. I mean, that's been going on forever.
Forever.
It's right around.
Yeah.
It's right around the corner.
It's interesting how similar that movement is to the prophecy crowd.
Yes.
They're the
Yeah.
exact
Very much
same
so.
way. Like it's gonna happen this year, guys, or it's leading up to this, and it's all it's always the same thing.
And how long they've been running that? So
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Problem with ufology that every year or every decade there's a new batch of newcomers that get interested in the subjects, or they start to surf the web, find information. Oh, look at that! There's an underground alien base in Dulce, New Mexico. Oh my God! Everybody should know about this.
What's funny is that you still have people that will come up with it, will still recycle this old stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then they'll start making money off of it.
Absolutely.
Start.
And if,
Well, since you bring that up, Red Pill,
What?
have you seen the new movie about Lazar? I have not seen it.
No, I'm waiting until you can rent it.
Okay, so it's just available to buy right now, I guess.
Yeah. Jeremy Corbell tends to do that with his movies. I mean, he's right that
Sure.
first he lets them for purchasing, and after a month passes, that they are available for just renting them.
you didn't get into the elite screening.
No, although some of my friends went to it, to the screening in Los Angeles. Walter Bosley was there. I know that he was there.
Yeah, he went.
He was also there.
What is the overall thought about it?
That it doesn't really bring anything new to the table.
Yeah. Kind of what I figured. I
But
mean, so little does bring anything new. That's part of the problem.
The thing is, they're just taking the same old stuff and recycling it and making it cooler for a new hip generation.
And casting away the pesky little disturbing things that are against Lazar's story. like, for example, the fact that he claimed to have all these degrees from Caltech and MIT, and there's been nobody has been able to find the records of him ever.
Uh-huh.
Although
Right.
let's forget about that, because Jeremy Corbell even said in an interview, I don't even care if Bob Lazar was homeschooled, as long as he can confirm that he worked with flying saucers on S4.
The
51.
military might care though.
Yeah. I mean, my overall impression is that Bob Lazar is a brilliant individual from a technical point of view. That he probably was working as a technician, not as a scientist, at Los Alamos, and probably even at Area 51. And he was used as within disinformation agent. This is something that he says that is so stupid that he doesn't believe it, but at the same time, everything that's part of the story is better understood if he was the subject of some kind of like psyops manipulation. Everything that he claimed, all the harassment that he suffered, that he will go with his friend to the gym, and then when they will come back to his car, all the doors were open. That is classical gaslighting.
Yep.
That's
true.
classical way to bring someone to the age and becoming paranoid. And that's when he felt that he had to, go and give his story to George Knapp. And there's even something that was brought up by some of our friends with regards to one of Jacques Vallée's books. I think it was Confrontations, in which he interviewed Bob Lazar. And Bob Lazar claimed that when he went to work at S4, that they will draw blood from him and do all these kind of like medical tests. And he even once was asked to drink some kind of liquid. So what does that sound? He even said that he wasn't even sure if his memory manipulated.
Yeah.
You think they? So you think they probably drugged him?
Probably drugged him. Yeah. Probably kind of like maybe he's more of a Manchurian candidate than a whistleblower.
Yeah.
Yeah. Possibly they messed with him.
Yeah.
It would not be. I wouldn't put it past them to have done something like that. He might just be a complete disinformation agent himself. He's just making the whole thing up, so it just keeps the whole that whole ball rolling. And now maybe he just needs money, and he's just doing it.
I don't think he needs money.
Yeah.
I would say this. I don't think that. Maybe at the beginning he tried to make money out of it, tried to arrange some kind of like movie deal out of it, and we know that he also sold his story on video cassette, and there was this plastic model kit of the sports model flying saucer that was sold by the Testor Corporation, which, by the way, this is something that was even acknowledged by one of our friends. When I said, at first he was skeptical about it, but if you see it, the sports model is identical to one of the Billy Myers Palladium beam ships that he used to broke on Switzerland.
One of the hubcaps flying in.
Yeah. So what's up with that?
How much does that model go for now?
Yeah, what's up with the fact that Bob Lazar claimed that he had a majestic clearance in order to work on S4? And I think that the only one who still defends the legitimacy of the majestic papers is, oddly enough, Stanton Friedman, the person who is in the eyes of some like Bob Lazar's #1 nemesis.
Hmm.
You know, and with Stanton Friedman and the Majestic stuff, it's kind of like the archaeologists and their stuff. You get so locked into something where he's just not, no matter what you show him, those are real.
Yeah.
And Linda Moulton Howe, the same way, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. But here's the thing with Lazar, and this is something that I said in another podcast. Probably the reason why I'm so against the story per se, not him per se, but the story per se, or the idea behind the story, is that it is just so reasonable. And the fact that after so many years of studying the UFO phenomenon, and understand that high strangeness and the absurdity is like one of the main components of this phenomenon, the fact that Lazar's story sounds so plausible is the reason why I'm so hesitant to take it for granted.
Yeah. Well, in the same way you can sell these old stories to new audiences, those new audiences are also not as tied to these old figures who've been such a fixture of these scenes. So
Right.
that's the positive side to that.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I guess it's fairly new news. So I think it's Cassini that went to Saturn, and it found that the makeup of the rings of Saturn, it has the exact same water that we have on Earth. And that shouldn't be. It should be completely different, because the traditional method of planet formation has those planets forming very differently than the inner planets. But of course, this was reported through Thunderbolts, which is the Electric Universe people, because going back to Velikovsky, he said that Earth was connected to Saturn and then got its water from Saturn, because this is what the old myths and stuff say. So again, you're looking at these old myths that say very specifically this is a thing that happened, and of course science says no, it's not.
Right.
And now we're getting information that says, oh, well, actually the water's the same in the rings of Saturn as it is on Earth, and that we have no explanation as for why that's the case.
Cool. And the idea that these ancient people managed to get this information probably from methods that have nothing to do with our scientific way of understanding things.
Right.
It's the same conundrum that ethnobotanists have in order to explain how people in the Amazons managed to get the right combination of plants in order to concoct the ayahuasca brew.
Yeah.
You know, out of thousands and thousands of plants that are in the Amazons, and most of them look just exactly the same to you and me. You know, like the green leaves look the same to me, bro. And to the shamans, they will say, no, this one is fuerte. This one is the one that you need to use in order to make the ayahuasca, and this one no vale. One is not good. And when scientists like Dennis McKenna go and study these plants using microscopes and chromatographs, they realize, right, that DMT levels on the plants that were called fuertes by the shaman are the ones who have a high concentration of DMT. Yeah. And how is it that he managed to get that?
Yeah, that's and they say the plants told them.
That plants told us how to do it, right?
But since we know that's not possible,
we're starting to understand that plants do communicate. True. Through chemistry and through other means.
Yeah. And it also should be telling us that consciousness is not always going to be exactly what we expect it to be.
Right.
Slowly we get there.
I had to stop communicating with plants a long time ago, man.
Why? Were they telling you lies?
No, it was just a little bit too heavy, man.
Oh, so what else has happened this year? We have a little bit of time left.
Uh,
I feel like
well,
Red Pill had something else.
well, right from the top of my head, there was a lot of discussion regarding Umama.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You know, I think all these brave scientists who ventured the idea that okay, maybe this was actually some kind of artificial object that
yeah.
visited our solar system, and we blew it. We missed our chance to talk to the aliens.
Well, it moved through very quickly.
Hmm. Or quicker than it should have.
Yes, considerably quicker than it should have.
It just wanted to get past Earth as fast as it could.
Yeah, I would too.
out of the quarantine zone, man.
That's what it is. There's the aliens go past Earth, they roll their windows up.
Hit the door lock.
But the interesting thing is how scientists reacted to that idea. Like say, no, it cannot be. It's like, why? Why, shoot down a priori the possibility? We just don't know. We just don't know because we have these expectations of how an alien craft should behave.
Right.
Right.
Well, I mean, come on, guys. We've already got the Black Knight satellite. We don't.
Mm-hmm.
The Black Knight satellite has taken on a whole new meaning. The first I heard of it was in John Keel's books, where he just mentioned that they kept picking up a satellite that had a polar orbit, and then it just seemed to disappear. And then lately I've been hearing more about it, and I'm like, there's this whole mythology that's built up around this satellite that I don't know where it came from.
Right.
Yeah, I think those pictures there that you see, I think those are just stuff that came off the space shuttle or.
I didn't even know there were pictures.
Junk. Oh yeah, there's reported pictures of the
photographs,
the Black Knight satellite. But you've got, I mean, there's some people out there that think that the Black Knight, it's like a space platform put up there by like some ancient civilization or something.
Right.
Ancient weapons array.
Like, I think it was even used on a Pepsi commercial.
Yeah, it was. I've never seen the commercial, but it actually was used on there. Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of odd stuff when you look back through the Forteana of the times, where the Black Knight satellite being one of them, where they did detect this satellite and they had no idea what the hell was going on, and then it disappeared. But you also got like transmissions from astronauts that were picked up when we know there were no astronauts up there. I'm trying to remember the details. It's stuff I've read over the years. Like someone was picking up shortwave transmissions from astronauts talking about how they're never going to be able to go back to Earth and they're going to die up there and stuff like that. And we didn't have anyone up there at the time.
Yeah, that was they. I saw something about that where I think it was two Italian guys.
Yeah.
That they picked up these transmissions that they thought were coming from the Soviet Union. And so the speculation is that these were cosmonauts that were sent up before Gagarin actually went up there, and that it was these failed space flights, and like the Soviets just weren't admitting to them.
I think there's a few mythologies around some secret black Russian space stations and cosmonauts lost up there and secret space program stuff. I think there's a few of them.
Yeah,
there are a lot of them.
I've been watching the old James Bond movies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like I watched You Only Live Twice, and I'm watching this thing and I'm just like, this is secret space program stuff.
Yep.
Because you've got Spectre sending up, trying to cause problems between the Soviet Union and the United States, and they're sending up this other rocket that steals the other power's spacecraft. And it's like, this is straight up secret space program stuff. And that's in 1967 that movie.
I mean, secret space mythology has been around for a long time. I mean, you can look at the Teen comic books, and they talk about a secret trip to the moon.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so this idea that it became more predominant nowadays to the point that some jackass wanted to actually copyright the term. Well, it's kind of like an aggregate. It's like kind of a snowball effect of all these stuff, like this idea, the Dark Knight mythology. It became from, it started small, and it starts to gather up things from other places, and to the point that now it's not just an alien satellite spying on us. It's actually a Sumerian ancient satellite that's been there for, I don't know, 5,000 years or 25,000 years, and God knows what. It's the way that myths and memes grow almost like a virus on the internet.
Yeah. That is very true. You look back at some of the other old accounts of things, and you got, was it Tesla who was picking up radio signals from Mars?
Right.
And you have the whole canals of Mars where, people were looking at Mars and they were seeing these canals, and then suddenly there weren't canals anymore.
Wasn't that a mistranslation from the Italian word canali?
I think some of it was, but I think there were some people who did see actual canals.
Right. Maybe out of the idea of that they wanted to see the canals.
That could be.
I've got an idea, guys. Does anyone have any predictions for the next year?
Disclosure won't happen.
Full disclosure. They're really demonic entities. It's childhood's end. They're going to come out with horns.
They're transdimensional beings that a precursor to the space program. That's what
Okay, here's one. NASA will finally admit that there was life on Mars.
That's a good one.
I thought you were going to say that they would admit the Earth is flat.
That too.
That's the real
Had to
disclosure.
go there.
It's all Photoshop. It's all.
Yeah, I think life on Mars is a good possibility, as well as acknowledging life elsewhere in the solar system. I mean, within my lifetime, it was they were absolutely certain that there was no life anywhere in the solar system. That always bugged me, because it's like, how do you know that for sure?
Yeah, right.
We don't even know what forms life takes. And I think slowly we've come to that conclusion. We're still looking for familiar forms of life, but even within the solar system, we're realizing that things are nothing like what we expect them to be. I mean, look at Pluto, which they expected to be just a ball of ice, and it turned out to not be anything like that.
Yeah, complex world.
Was that this year? Did we get to Pluto this year?
No, it was last year. Oh, by the way, maybe next year we'll finally get confirmation of Planet X.
Hey.
Yeah, that's every year. Planet X as in Nibiru. Are you talking Planet X like an actual planet?
Yeah, like an actual planet. There are scientists, NASA scientists, who are gathering up all this evidence that there is some really big, giant object past, I guess, the Oort cloud.
Yeah.
Or the Kuiper belt, and that is causing all these gravitational effects.
I still like the idea that it's serious and we're in a binary relationship with it.
Maybe. Well, I don't know.
I mean, it actually solves all the problems that we have that we're looking for that other mass for.
Right.
But somehow I don't think that admission's coming anytime soon.
Well, who knows, man? That's the problem with trying to
Dogon's
predict
already
the
told
future.
us a long time ago.
What?
I said the Dogon's already told us a long time ago, so that should be all the disclosure you need.
Well, Sirius is mentioned in multiple ancient cultures as our second sun.
Yeah.
Right.
But so is Saturn. So it's hard to tell. So, is there anything else we missed as far as space or science or the weird? I think we not. It feels like not a lot of really impressive stuff happened this year. Honestly, there were a few interesting UFO sightings and stuff like that, but nothing that really struck me as wow. That was really something that really moved things forwards.
Right, right.
I mean,
Like
so much of the
flap.
talk is, huh?
Like there was no UFO flap
Right.
2019.
So much of it was around disclosure. It was around the To the Stars Academy. It was around the whole oh, what's his name? With the Blue Avians there, Corey Good,
Right.
and him feuding with David Wilcock. And I
Right.
mean, it seems like it was all just nonsense rather than actual like, oh, look, here's this interesting thing that happened.
It was all a bunch of egos just kind of competing with each other.
Well,
Yeah.
it's because I feel people pay attention to that nonsense instead of paying attention to the really interesting stuff like Dean Radin's book, Real Magic,
Yeah.
Jeffrey Kripal's book, Supernatural, and next year, Diana Pasulka's book, American Cosmic. I think it's going to be also something that we're.
What was
American
the title?
American Cosmic.
Okay.
And hopefully, Seriah, you will have her next year to talk about it because I think it's really going to blow your mind. It certainly blew mine. I mean, it was the kind of book that I had to stop every 2-3 paragraphs just to go write something in my journal and spend thinking about it.
I'm gonna try to get her on Conspirinormal too.
Yeah, please. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I'm more excited about. The idea.
Oh, go ahead.
No.
The idea that what?
One of the things that she talks about in the book is how apparently some people that are involved with the space program are totally in belief that there are non-human entities that help them develop technologies toward the advancement of that space program.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think there's a lot of really interesting research being done. It's just not the stuff people are hearing about.
Yeah.
It's the stuff that's coming out in books like Supernatural and stuff like that. That is, that's where the really important stuff is happening. It's just not making the headlines because the headlines is all swamped with drama.
Well, there's two levels to it. It's like music subcultures. You have like commercial music, and then you have the real authentic underground stuff. It's the same kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And most people don't look at the authentic thing. They're just looking at the flavor of the month.
Right.
Yeah, they want the digestible stuff, like the easy pop, instead of listening to complex music. In the UFO world, they want to talk about, to the stars and how they were gonna replicate alien technology, thanks to Bob Lazar and whatever. They don't want to talk about how the human soul may be composed of some kind of plasma-like energy that is conscious and that is independent of the body, and somehow also is able to trigger the visionary experience among mystics and among all the people that you find in religious books.
Who proposed that?
Well, Kripal.
Did he?
Yeah.
I have not read that.
Yeah, in his chapter, "The Soul is a UFO," in the Supernatural.
The
Supernatural. Yeah.
I don't remember that. Because that's
Soul is a UFO. I love that line.
Yeah, this is the thing that is blowing my mind. I can't get past that chapter because I keep getting back to it again and again and again. And say, yeah, this thing makes total sense. The idea that what we see as just those orange orbs that some people see, it is some kind of like conscious energy.
Yeah, I think plasma is something that we vastly underestimate.
Right.
Andrew Collins'
Light
book,
too. Yeah.
what is it called? Light Quest.
Right.
He talks about that. I mean, he presents the entire UFO phenomena in the idea of it being intelligent plasma trying to communicate with us.
Yeah. Maybe a plasma that is also capable of, under certain conditions, manifesting some kind of like material presence.
Yeah.
In the way that Jacques Vallée is research on these material samples that supposedly claim from UFOs seem to indicate that these energies, these intelligence, are capable of transforming energy into matter and matter into energy. I mean, this is where I'm at right now in 2018. Me at 45 years of age, after spending 35 plus years studying this crap. So when people tell me, "Oh, you need to take another look at Bob Lazar," like, what again? It's like telling me you need to take a chemistry class from high school again, man.
By the way, I just saw I just saw on Facebook the movie is available for rent now. So
yeah, I'll check it out then this weekend.
All right. Well, I guess that will do for this show.
All right.
And I thank you guys for joining me here for what will probably be the last show of 2018.
Awesome.
And hopefully 2019 will be utterly fascinating.
Yes, let's hope that. Yes.
Yeah.
And where can people find all of you? Let's start with Red Pill.
Well, you can find me at Daily Grail, where I work as a news administrator and also one of the writers. www.dailygrail.com. You can also find me sporadically at mysteriousuniverse.org, where I also contribute as one of the bloggers. And also they obviously can find me here. I also have my own website, absurdbydesign.com. I also have a Zazzle store where I used to sell T-shirts. I don't talk about it that often, but please check it out. You know, I promise that in 2019 I will put up more designs, more T-shirt designs for you to check out.
All right, cool. And Adam?
Well, you can find me and Serfiel too at www.conspirinormal.com and conspirinormal.podomatic.com.
All right. Serfiel, anything else for you?
Conspirinormal.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Gracias.
And a special thanks to my Patreons, without whom this show may not still be, honestly. Extra special thanks to those of you pledging $10 or more: Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Andy McNamara, Charles Beauregard, Craig Cisternos, Eric Citron, Jose A., Scott Morris Everett, Sean Cosgrove, Robert Groom, Roland Belstadt, Riker and Stark, John Rutledge Foster III, Russell Wilcoxon, Sasha Lorg, Kevin Olson, Paul Buscini, Christopher Vaughn, Samantha, Tim, Kevin, Ben Crow, Carla Mahoney, Savannah Barlow, John Eddy, Chris, Mark Brady, William Lovelace, Patricia Giaquinta, Kevin Schreck, Alex Bose, and Alfred Tuttle. Thank you all so very much. All right. So there is a Patreon extra segment that followed this recording. And this is the last show of 2018. And it's been a year. Especially the last half. So, I'm hoping to get things, better and better shape as we go on. Coming up on the 6th anniversary of the show, the last Saturday of January 26th, will be the 6th anniversary of the show. I'm going to have, hopefully, if all goes well, I'm going to have Jim Elvich on, since he was the very first guest, and he has a brand new book out, called Digital Consciousness. So I'm going to have him on to talk about that. And hopefully, although I haven't talked to either of them, I don't think it's going to be an issue, we'll have Mike Cleland and Aaron Gullius on the week after to do some kind of UFO history thing. I mean, we've talked so much about stuff as it's been going on this year. Maybe we'll do something a little bit different with them. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I do want to thank everyone who has supported this show and me in any way. Spreading the word, giving us good ratings, giving us great, comments and emails, becoming a patron, just donating. It all matters, and it all it all counts. And thank you. Thank you so much for the support. As I've said before, I didn't know if anyone was going to give a damn about this show, and I'm really happy to see I was wrong on that. So, yeah, I'm going to try and get 2 shows a week again next year, as things on my end are starting to settle down a little bit. Still repairing flood damage, but things are getting better overall. Be back next year. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.